I want to walk you through a few of the ideas that I use when I approach applying these different kinds of valves to the solo here. So first, just to get an idea of where these positions are, what we're dealing with here is, say, playing C in sixth position or playing C in valve first position, B flat in seventh position versus B flat and valve second position, and a variety of other different things. Using that perfect fourth idea we discussed when we were tuning the valves, we can get a good idea for where these positions lie. This is an exercise starting on fourth line F. Just by depressing and undepressing the valve, we hear F, C, B flat, C, and then back up to F. We can extend this into the lower range as well by going down from the B flat. Now, if you work through this exercise, moving down in half steps on the slide, second position, third position, and so on, what you're going to find is that the notes on the valve are going to need to be pushed out a little bit farther to compensate for the length of the instrument. You're going to need to make the instrument lower or flatter to get a true half step. It also gives us a nice opportunity to practice blowing straight through the valve change without any variation in the air. Those notes in that last exercise are E flat, B flat and valve flat third using just the F trigger, and then down to low A flat. So let's start talking about applying this to the individual solo. The thing to think about here is whether we're trying to make the trombone sound a little bit more trombone-y by using the half-step relationship with the slide, or allowing the natural slur to occur, which might give us a little bit more security or a little bit more pop out of individual notes. There's a few places in this etude where I'm doing both. There's a few places in this etude where I'm actually using valve flat 3 B flat because we're either going from an A or we're going from a B natural but down to an A. Measure 3 and 4 is a great example of this. That's a place where if I play that B flat in first position, it might get a little bit more pop than I want. You can really hear it that time. The B flat tends to stick out of the line a little bit more. That's not necessarily what we want because that's not necessarily where the accents are written. Moving on to measures 10, 11, and 12 is another example of this, using some notes in the lower register. Now, instead of using our low D below the staff with two valves, we're going to maintain that half-step relationship by playing E flat, valve flat 3, low D, valve flat 4 in measure 11, and then reversing the process in measure 12. D, E flat, F in sixth position because we're going straight to F sharp in fifth position. Some of the places where we might want to use the valve as a way to get through a natural slur or to add a little bit more pop to a note is in the funk section. If we look at measure 40, we have this pattern that goes, on beat 3, we have these 16 notes that go D, C, B flat, C. In this case, the valve, playing the B flat and valve flat 3, gives us a little bit of security, and it also gives us a pattern that's parallel or mirrored from these two groups of 16 notes, D in fourth, C in fourth, B flat and valve flat 3, which is close to fourth, back to C. The other place where this crops up that's a really good example is measure 45, the lick that starts on F and then ends in the low B flat. We get that nice symmetry of using the valve, not using the valve, using the valve, not using the valve, and then going back to using the valve. It's kind of like helps us keep our rhythm accurately. It also allows us to push the air through the valve changes like we talked about with the first exercise without having to add our tongue, which should make execution over time, if you practice it, a little bit easier. The last thing to talk about when it comes to valve technique is dealing with issues of balance. When we've got an instrument that's so heavy, this is something that becomes rather important. That's the one other thing you want to think about. You want to make sure that your valve changes and slide position throws aren't too long and throwing yourself out of alignment or out of whack. A great example of this is measure 6. Bringing that C at the end of measure 6 back all the way into first position might feel a little bit awkward. And it even adds a little bit more accent than I wanted there too. I could also try the low F in 6th position. And that works pretty well too. This balance issue is a little bit different for every player, and every horn responds a little bit differently. If you're always guided by the idea that you're trying to make the best sound possible and really listening for that, as well as maintaining a relaxed physical posture, you're going to be in good shape.